The latest. Thank you for your love and support. I appreciate you all. There is a Ugandan proverb that says, Awasize Mbao Yakisu Mulula. The person who tied out the dog is the only one who can unite it. But what happens when the person you ask to unite the dog is the very person who gave you the rope in the first place? In February 2026, a young man from the ghetto of Kambucha, a man whose voice once shook the dance floors of Kampala, stood before the marble pillars of the European Union Parliament. Robert Kaguluyin, known to be as Bobi Wine, made a plea that has sent shockwaves across the continent. He didn't ask for trade. He didn't ask for a cultural exchange. He asked for sanctions. But to understand why this moment is so heavy, we cannot start it in Brussels. We have to start on the ships. We have to start with the men in pit helmets who sat around a table in Berlin in 1984, carving up a continent they have never seen, like a birthday cake. They called it the civilizing mission. We call it the beginning of the long night. Bobi Wine, that the youth of Uganda are so much in love with, has done something that shocked you all. The Pearl of Africa was not a country before the British arrived. It was a collection of kingdoms, cultures, and spirits. The British brought the Bible in one hand and the Maxim gun in the other. They taught us to look to London for validation, to look to the West for definition of right and wrong. For nearly 70 years, the colonial rulers ruled by divide and conquer. When they finally left in 1962, they didn't really leave. They left behind a template of power, a template where the leader sits at the top and the people at the bottom, and where the international community acts as the ultimate schoolmaster.
Be Rita. Yes.
Sure. May I request that you repeat the question again, please?
So, Robert, first I said all the best for you personally and for your family, but I wanted to know a part of putting light on the situation and organizing meetings like this and calling for targeted sanctions. What else can we do in order to support you on the ground that are working for democracy in your country?
Thank you very much. I'll talk about what you can do from your end and what you can do from our end here in Uganda. From your end, of course, you can apply targeted sanctions. And I hear very many times regime apologists claiming that when you put targeted sanctions on individuals, it affects the nation. No, it does not. It saves the nation. You can slap targeted sanctions, travel sanctions, economic and legal, to the individuals, which individuals we have presented internationally, and others have actually come out themselves, like General Muhoozi, Museveni's son. You have laws like the Global Magnitsky, which has been applied to many human rights violators. We request that the same be applied to the regime back in Uganda. But also association. I mean, it slaps those who believes in democracy and human rights in the face when they see ambassadors or diplomats from the world-known democracies standing shoulder to shoulder with gross human rights violations. For example, imagine just a day or hours after General Muhoozi tweets taking pride in murdering people, in attacking people's families and undressing people and tweeting it, taking pride in killing. And then the next minute, you're going to see an official picture of an ambassador from a renowned democracy standing shoulder to shoulder. That is embracing, that is legitimizing impunity. And we call for distancing on that. I mean, I've not seen an ambassador or an government official from a democracy standing shoulder to shoulder with Lukashenko or these other, renowned dictators. Also, we have requested that for all the aid that is extended to Uganda, let it be conditional. Let it be conditioned to respect to democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. That would be very helpful. If it is not possible to cut out any cooperation, of course, the best thing would be from anything that contradicts the same. However, if it is not achievable to completely disassociate, then at least let there be a minimum of demanded, reforms that can lead Uganda to a line of democracy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bobi Wine. And now I would like to give the floor to Ms. Sarah Biriti. I don't see her. Are you still there? Yes.
Yes.
Ms. Sarah, can you say something?
Thank you so much.
About what we can do from our side? More.
Yes, I associate myself with the submissions of Honorable Chagrani on what you can do. I just want to re-emphasize 3 issues. One is that you should use more of the Global Magnitsky Act on individuals that are engaged in gross violations of human rights in Uganda. 2 is that you should put stringent measures to your funding agreements regarding the protection of human rights, democracy, and the rule of law in Uganda that are at their lowest at this time, and we are worried about the next 5 years as citizens. 3 is that you should support more people as compared to government, empower the people to fight for and protect their democracy. This is what you can do.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Biriti. And now, last, I would like to give the floor to Ms. Johnson. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit more about the sanctions, but also the conditions for aid.
Thank you very much. Well, it has been many references to the treaties of the European Union, and of course that is what's steering our engagement with all our partners globally. So it also in this case, of course, our development cooperation and our cooperation in general is not unconditional. It is based on our very clear values and expectations.
Thank you very much, friends. Greetings. I appreciate so much the opportunity. I want to appreciate the European Union Parliament for the resolution on Uganda and for keeping an eye on Uganda. We don't take it for granted. Every time we see development partners keeping an eye on what is happening here in Uganda. We also recognize that the EU is an important partner to Uganda, and we intend to maintain and also improve this partnership and this cooperation. We would also love to see this relationship happening between the people of Uganda and the European Union, not just General Museveni's illegitimate military regime. I'm still on the run. I'm still in hiding because of the continuing threats on my life since what happened on the 16th of January when my house was, my compound was raided and I fled my house. And also the following raid that happened on the 23rd of January where my wife was assaulted and my family members were assaulted, and the military took over my home, which the military still occupies to the present day. My home is surrounded and the military is in charge of it now. What happened on the 15th of January and the preceding days was not an election. It was a military operation, and I'm very glad that it was clearly stated during the debate in the European Union Parliament. This violence started much earlier. It started on nomination day, and it went on through the campaign trail. And I'm glad that the resolution mentions in specifics victims like Mesa Chokero, who was shot and killed, and also General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, who is the military chief and the son of General Museveni, came out on Twitter and, mentioned how we killed 22 of our people and hoping that I would be the 23rd. I must mention, though, that the numbers that he put are much, much less. Maybe he mentioned or he meant those that he killed personally. Otherwise, the numbers that we have of the victims, of the people that have been killed, are much, much, much more than 22. Many civil society organizations were closed down, especially those that are in the area of governance. It was mentioned, and I want to reiterate it again, that the internet was shut down 3 days before the election. Media houses were ordered not to relay the results that were happening and all that was going on ground on the polling stations to ensure that there's a clear disconnect between what was happening in the polling stations and what was being relayed by the Electoral Commission. I'm very glad that Dr. Sarah Birete is with us today. In this meeting, she was arrested, detained, because she was taking an effort to speak out and educate people, the citizens of Uganda, about their rights and on democracy. I mentioned it that 2 of my deputy presidents were abducted on the eve of the election, and they remained missing for 3 weeks. We later learned that they were being detained in a military barracks, in a special forces military barracks, which is run by General Museveni's son, Muhoozi Kainerugaba. Most of our coordinators were arrested, were picked and detained. Some are still in detention, while some were dropped off. These also included officials from our election management committee. So what Mr. Byabakama, the chairperson of the Electoral Commission, relayed was actually completely different from what happened on the grounds. The law requires that there must be coordination in the tallying of the results. That did not happen. The candidates were not given copies of declaration of result forms, and the Electoral Commission simply declared numbers that it did not justify where they were coming from. As we speak, we are still demanding that the Electoral Commission uploads the declaration forms so that the nation can be able to follow in transparency, so we can be able to compare the evidence that we have, the declaration of result forms that we have, to what was paraded by the Electoral Commission. But up to now, they have not uploaded the results on the internet like it's supposed to be. Somebody may ask, why then didn't we go to court? But we've mentioned it again that institutions in Uganda have all been destroyed, and including the judiciary. The manner of appointment of the Chief Justice recently is evidence to that. The Chief Justice was sworn in General Museveni's farm. So that and many other reasons cause us not to have trust in the judiciary in Uganda, and many times the regime, General Museveni or his son, have actually been guiding publicly and sometimes privately, determining how the judiciary does its work. So we found no redress whatsoever in the Ugandan judiciary, and that's why we did not go to court. We have presented some asks which I want to reiterate here. We've asked for targeted sanctions that target particular individuals and regime officials that have, excelled in gross human rights violations. We believe that will curb their appetite in abusing, human rights, in undermining democracy, and to ensure that there's accountability for their crimes against humanity. Because I know we have other speakers on the platform, I want to appreciate you for the opportunity and to further call for more interest and for more attention to the people of Uganda. We really, really appreciate the attention, but we still request the international community to keep an eye on Uganda, to keep an eye on what is going on here in our country. I thank you for God and my country.
Thank you very much. I can promise we will do that. I make sure as a chair of the delegation EU Africa that we will keep an eye on Uganda and we will follow up the situation very closely.
Exploit the rise of Yoweri Museveni in 1986. He was a new breed of African leader. He talked about Pan-Africanism. He talked about African solutions for African problems. But 40 years later, the new breed has become the old guard. The liberation hero has become the very thing he fought against. This is the tragedy of African power. Our leaders who always come with sugar-coated words end up doing the same thing that they are accusing their masters. Bobi Wine represents the youth. He represents the 75% of the Ugandans under the age of 30 who have known only one president their entire life. He is the voice of the frustrated, the unemployed, and the silenced. But in February 2026, Bobi Wine did something that has made even his most ardent Pan-African supporters pause. He went back to the old colonial masters. He stood in the EU Parliament and begged them to punish his own country. Just because Bobi Wine didn't get the power that he needed, ran back to EU Parliament to ask for sanctions against his own country, against the same people Bobi Wine told the world he wants to liberate. What an amazing leader we have and a Pan-African that we have in Uganda. There is no true leader of Africa that will run to EU Parliament asking for sanctions against his own people. Because when they finally do put sanctions on Uganda, it is you and I that will suffer. Yoweri Museveni and his family will never suffer any sanction. Life will become unbearable for you and not your president. So, I hope now you can read through the lines of who is a true fighter for your liberation. Even if Yoweri Museveni we know isn't doing the right thing and he don't want to leave, but the best thing isn't for you to ask for punishment. The same people who are punishing us, the same people that gave us the system that is keeping Yoweri Museveni in power, is the same person Bobi Wine is running to for help. My brothers and sisters in Uganda, we have come a long way. We should be able to see who a true leader is. Bobi Wine isn't a true leader for you, the people in Uganda. Yoweri Museveni might be bad, as you think, but maybe in this case, he is better than Bobi Wine. A Pan-Africanist believes that Africans' destiny belongs to Africans. By asking the EU to sanction Museveni, Bobi Wine is essentially saying, we are no longer strong enough to fix our own house. Please, master, come and whip the father of the home. When you invite the EU to sanction a leader, you are inviting them to decide who is fit to lead in Africa. Is that liberation or is it a new form of salagi? Africans, like they said, the African is not capable of managing his own affairs. And every day we prove these people right by our deeds. The proponents say sanctions are targeted. They say they only hit the bank accounts of the generals. But history tells a different story. Look at Zimbabwe. Look at Sudan. Look at Iraq. When a country is sanctioned, the exchange rate collapses. The prices of soap goes up. The prices of fuel triples. The general in the palace still eats steak. But the mother in the village can no longer buy salt. Is Bobi Wine asking for sanctions because he loves the people or because he is desperate to win? If you burn down the house to get rid of rats, where will the family sleep? We see the contrast. On one hand, a regime that uses violence to stay in power. On the other, an opposition that uses the white man's sanction to try and force a change. Both sides are looking everywhere except at the unified power of the African people. As we look at the footage of Bobi Wine in Brussels, we must ask, where is the African Union? Who are the neighbors? Why is it that when an African leader is in trouble or an African opposition is desperate, the first flight is always to Europe? The colonialists left the land, but they never left the mind. The African agitation we see today is not just about changing a president, it's about changing the direction of the gaze. We must stop being the children who run to the headmaster every time there is a fight on the playground. Whether it is Museveni, iron grip, or Bobi Wine's European plea, the result is the same. Africa remains a theater for foreign interests. The Black Star must find its own light. We must solve our problems with African hands, African hearts, and African wisdom. Because as the proverb says, a guest who stays too long starts to smell. It is time for the guests in Brussels and Washington to step back, and for the youth of Uganda to step up, and not with sanctions, but with the unstoppable power of a united people. We are the only ones that can set ourselves free. United we stand, divided we fall, and united we keep standing forever and ever. The greatest enemy of the African is mental slavery. So let's decolonize ourselves from mental slavery. Let's keep sharing to educate our brothers and sisters. Together we'll make Africa great for ourselves and the next generations that are going to come. So that's the latest around the world in Africa, East Africa, and in Uganda.